Hey all beautiful people, I am back with a part 2 and I am extremely sorry that this one took so long to come out, even though a good number of you requested for the next study advice video. I'm so sorry, I just couldn't get to it as fast as I would have liked to. And if you haven't watched the part 1 or the unsolicited A-level advice video, do go and check it out because I think it will be relevant, especially if you are watching this. I'll be talking about a very important tip at the end as a bonus in addition to the 7 tips that I will be talking about. So do stay till the end and check that out. I mean, you could skip to the very end, but integrity. But yeah, without further ado, let us jump into the video. Tip number 1 is take breaks. I'm not giving out free licenses to take 12-hour breaks twice a day. No, A-levels is a game of hard work and you need to work hard, which is precisely why taking breaks is extremely important. Lots of people burn out really fast because they haven't taken enough breaks. If you get up from your study environment, walk around a little bit and come back, you freshen up a lot physically and mentally, and it helps you to get into studying in a much more fresh state. You might have heard of something called the attention curve, and generally it is said that your attention span drops at around 40 minutes, which is why I suppose school periods and Zoom sessions last for around 40 minutes. So when your attention is at a low, you are not really getting any work done, which is why breaks are important because they help you to freshen up a lot. You can train your brain to have a longer or a shorter attention span. I used to be able to study for 3 hours straight as a kid, but now for real, my attention span is literally 15 seconds, a TikTok video. Thank you, social media and instant gratification. You might have heard of the Pomodoro technique. There are lots of Pomodoro timers available on the App Store, so you can just get one and you can set the timer to whatever your optimum time span is and then take a break afterwards. So generally it's like a shorter 5-minute break after every 40 minutes, and then after 4 of those sessions you can take a longer 20-minute break. That is what is recommended, but you can do whatever works for you. Which brings me to point number 2, log your time. Because have you ever had that day when you just feel like you just blinked and then the whole day went by and you have no idea what you did? Once you log your time, you realize that that half an hour you spent on Instagram is actually 3 hours and 30 minutes. Plus, make sure you have a to-do list and plan your day beforehand, because the little time that you spend in planning your day beforehand saves you a lot of effort afterwards. I mean, honestly, I know it's very easy for me to say because now that I'm looking back at this, I'm so lost right now. I can't study. I can barely imagine studying. I have no idea what I did in 2021. It's okay. I'm proud of this Sashwini too for various other reasons. So the other thing that I got to know that really helped is if you intend to study for, let's say, 6 hours today, then you overshoot and you allocate time for about 8 hours, right? Then you actually end up studying for that 6 hours. I mean, if you plan for the 6 hours, you will end up studying for like 4 hours or something like that. I genuinely wish I had known this earlier, but there you go, you have it now. And point number 3 is don't sacrifice your sleep, y'all. I know I'm probably the last person who is qualified to speak to you about a healthy sleep schedule, but what I can guarantee you is that the difference between running on 4 hours of sleep per day versus a healthy 6.5 to 8 hours is immense. Like, no joke, I remember when I was extremely busy during my early A-level years and I was basically running on like 4 hours of sleep every day for a long time. And I was basically dead and dying, and I sat at the front row and still fell asleep in class. And I was it really affected my learning capacity, and I didn't even know it affected my learning capacity until I started getting minimum 6.5 hours of sleep. And honestly, it was like a whole new world, like literally. I genuinely felt so much alive, so much alert, so much more enthusiastic. I felt like I was living an extra level, like, being alive at another level. Honestly, amazing feeling. 10 out of 10 would recommend. You should try. It's pretty sad that one of the first questions that A level kids ask me is, how many hours can you sleep for a day while you're doing A levels? It's sad that we are at that state and everybody expects you to hustle 24/7 and study 14 hours a day or whatever. Doesn't really work that way, honestly, you guys. Just get your sleep, you'll be so much fresh the next day. So I know a lot of people say wake up in the morning and study and like whatever. So I feel like this is a pretty controversial piece of advice, but what I'm saying is, if you are much more productive, you know, later during the day, at night, 1 to 4 a.m., go for it at your own risk, okay? Don't come and point at me now. Just make sure you get enough sleep. Point four is stay focused and use technology to your advantage. Switch off your notifications now, especially if you have only 1 or 2 months for your exam. I found that turning off notifications was a healthy way of coping with the social isolation brought about by the pandemic and the lockdown and having to get work done, because that way I didn't have to cut away from all of social media, because that was essentially the only link I had to my friends and the outside world. So I'm not going to ask you to switch off all of your social media accounts, etc., and come off it all, because I do understand, but the minimum that you can do is to switch off your notifications. Because the pandemic does force us to be much more involved with technology, I suggest that, we all use that technology to our advantage. There's plenty of apps available that allow you to block other apps or whitelist certain apps for a certain amount of time period or log your screen time. They're all extremely useful, especially stay focused. So switching off notifications and getting some of those apps meant that I didn't pounce on my phone every time I heard a ding, or I didn't, grab my phone for a 5 minute break and end up staying there for like 3 hours, which has happened so many times. So, yeah, use that technology to your advantage. Stay in touch with friends, lift each other up. If somebody is going through a particularly rough time or is going through a burnout, be there for them, share notes, hold each other accountable. Maybe if you like to study, as a group, whatever works for y'all. Tip number 5 is sit for school exams or practice exams. And I cannot reiterate this enough, because oftentimes I see a lot of students just not sit for these practice exams. They just don't turn up for these tests. And these things are really going to help you, because one, when you end up studying for these chuti little interim tests and unit wise tests, you are actually going through the subject in depth, which you probably won't be able to, when you're studying for the big huge exam. When you make short notes and study for that area, you are going to save yourself a lot of cramming at the end. 2, every time you go through this material for your school exam or term exam or whatever it may be, you're making yourself more and more familiar with the material. I mean, have you, book him studied for a test and got good marks and you're like, yeah! And then a few days later, you look at the book and you're like, what? What is this? Did we even learn this? How come I don't remember anything? Am I this dumb? Don't worry, if that has happened to you or if it is currently happening to you right now, it's okay. Don't panic. The more you go through the material, the easier it's going to transition from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. So when you repeat the material again and again, at the end you're going to find that you remember more of the information for a longer period of time. And 3, sitting for school exams mimics the actual exam condition, and that is a whole new experience that you probably won't get if you're sitting at home and doing your tests. I have done that. Honestly, does not work, right? The level of stress you will experience when you are on your 30th MCQ and then the invigilator is like 10 minutes more, that is scary. Or like the entirely opposite thing can happen, and you can just look at your first three questions and be like, okay, so like, is McDonald's hiring? Like, like, am I qualified even to be hired by McDonald's? I don't know. So the point is, these mock tests actually help you to prepare and get accustomed to the actual testing environment, so that the chances of you missing a question or forgetting to staple your paper or forgetting to bring your logbook will actually be much lower on the actual day of the exam. So don't skip these exams even if you feel underprepared for it. I know this was a especially big problem for me because I felt like, oh no, like maybe I'll skip this out and prepare later and face it properly. I found that the best mindset was to just decide, okay, I'm probably never going to feel 100% prepared, so I might as well face my challenges head on. And if I do get low marks or unexpected marks, I'll just accept it and work better for the next time. And that's important because even if you get low marks, you know where you are standing, right? You know how you compare to everyone else and how much you have imbibed the syllabus into your system. And that's important, right? Because if you say, okay, you know what, I won't do the test this time, but next time for sure I will study properly and sit the test, you're basically fooling yourself. Point number 6 is to do your past papers and repeat. So I think the best way to consolidate your learning and your knowledge during A levels is to do your past papers, because you get to actually know what the examiner is looking for while you're doing these papers. I used to waste so much of time and effort on memorizing these very minute, chooty things. For example, the colors of extremely rare compounds, until I realized the papers barely ever tested that, and that I could actually get more marks by studying what the papers questioned for 80% of the time, instead of focusing my attention on these extremely random, absurd concepts and just wasting a lot of time, right? Ideally, you should aim to cover the entire syllabus and be 100% prepared. But in the event that you cannot do that, it's not a good decision to waste time on those chooty things when you can be gaining a lot of marks elsewhere by knowing these basic concepts thoroughly. And that's what past papers teach you. So another thing is, while doing your past papers, you start to notice patterns. So for example, words like discuss, state, define, and describe are all expecting different answers from you, right? So by marking your whatever paper that you have done with the marking scheme, you get to know what they're expecting, and that is going to be really helpful. So I remember when I first heard that somebody completed their past papers 5 times around before they sat for their A-level exams, and I just panicked and I just then and there. But what is important for you to remember is that you will also be doing these questions when you first start studying that lesson, when you are doing those chooty term exams and for your school exams or final exams, and again at the revision class, and while you're doing your own past papers, maybe twice at that, right? So it will more or less come up to a good number of times if you have been doing your work regularly. So if you have been doing your work regularly, you don't have to get scared, right? And again, it's not the number of times you do your past papers, but how much you go into that past paper and absorb the stuff from it, right? Point number 7 is extremely important. Check the syllabus while you're studying. And I honestly wish I had known this earlier, because when you are checking that little syllabus book, you are again ensuring that you are on track and are not learning extra rubbish information, but also just finding key points, important key points that you have to touch on when you are writing your essay or answering your question, right? There are some certain extra information that is only available on the syllabus book, so just keep an eye out for that as well. Point 8, very important, make short notes and put everything, whatever you can, into pictorial format, that is a table or a chart or a mind map, whatever works for you, because especially as a visual learner, I found that extremely useful. And instead of having to read paragraphs, when you have that information in a chart, it's so much easier to consume. So remember that. Also, don't panic if you thought that that was my extremely important bonus tip. So my bonus tip is this: trust in yourself. Your mindset matters. The reason I say this is because what you think and say to yourself really affects your behavior and what you are capable of doing. And to drive this point home, here's an exercise that I saw in Marisa Peer's Uncompromised Life video. And this is what she asks us to do, right? She asks us to link your hands like this and to pull them apart, right? Just pull them apart like that. First, you say, you think to yourself, I can pull it apart. And then you're able to do it, right? And then you're like, I can't do it. I can't do it. It's really hard. It worked for me, and I was honestly mind blown. And every time I try it, works the same way. So do let me know in the comments below if it worked for you the same way. So basically, your body listens to your mind. And I'm not the best at positive thinking, but this made me realize that I cannot take my negative self-talk easily. It doesn't matter if everyone in the world believes in you or if no one in the world believes in you, if you don't believe in yourself, right? So regardless of whether you feel extremely underprepared or if you feel super confident, if you're not going to have faith in yourself and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to give it my best shot with whatever time I have left, and I'm going to trust in myself, it's not the best mindset to go into when you're doing your exam, right? You can have prepared so much, but if your mindset messes you up, it's gone.
So basically, what I'm trying to say is that you have to be your strongest believer, your own Hwa-chang. Hwa-chang reference. And yeah, so basically that brings us to the end of today's video. I do hope you found it useful. And if you did, give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments below. And if you think somebody else will also find it useful, do make sure to share it around because I would really appreciate that. And it would be really cool if I could hit 1K subs by the end of this year. And thank you so much for watching till the end. Even if you skipped, that's cool. And yeah, I hope to see you soon in the next video. That's it for today. Bye!